Something small is a very powerful thing. So, Preben, you are Swedish. Awesome. Nice to meet you. Mukbang. Mukbang. Oh, so you know. That's cool. You said professional eating. It's existed long before the internet, of course. But now the Chinese government is demonizing that culture and utilizing the internet um, to punish that culture. But yeah, I mean, so far what I've read, there hasn't been many directives or written like rules of what the consequences are, other than the president just making this announcement. And this is all new. I mean, I guess that article said he had started something in 2013, starting to address this issue, but this is all like within the past week. So maybe we'll start to hear of more definitive rules of what the consequences will be for someone that's wasting food. I mean, I don't know how you regulate that. But Previn, it is nice to meet you. Thank you so much for coming along. Welcome to my tea room. You're welcome to come back anytime you like. We have several other videos that you can see throughout our YouTube channel. And actually, I have all of them databased here with like short descriptions. So Previn, if you want to go back and see other stuff that we've talked about. And sometimes there's other people that come on and talk. If you wanted to come on and give your ideas and opinions, we can make that happen. And you can just comment here, or you can direct message through any of the channels that we're on, or you can just email me. I just put my email in the comments. So if you want to reach out to me. And my name is Elise, E-L-Y-S-E. I love to talk tea. If you love to talk tea too, let's do it. Let's make it happen. This is the time. I'm stuck at home. I got nothing else to do, so I'm doing this. I used to do it every single day since the beginning of the pandemic. Once I hit about 60 or 70 videos, I decided, you know what, maybe I don't need to do it every day now. And so now I only do it on the weekdays. And I have different themes. Tuesdays and Fridays are typically just industry update, tea education. So I will get into the tea education later, and I start talking about dragonwell from Gansu province. On Mondays, I do a segment called Dignified Hospitality. I talk about the state of the restaurant industry, and this is actually a formation of a manifesto. So all of the conversations had, which I invite various professionals within the hospitality industry to bring forward their ideas of what a dignified industry would look like. And I'm going to collect all those ideas and publish those as a manifesto, as a guide for entrepreneurs and legislators, and as well as other influencers within the industry that they can follow as reference about how they can create a more dignified system around themselves. And then on Wednesdays, I do the Constitution Study Group. Thanks, Jonelle, for letting me know that. So that's tomorrow. And so I just read the Constitution or the Federalist or the Anti-Federalist papers, and usually there's like a certain theme, and try to decipher and basically relearn this very simple civic information, especially as we're coming upon a very important election in a few months. I think it's very powerful for all of us to revisit all those things, no matter what our age, no matter what our intelligence. You know what? More than likely, we should study up on it, and really understand what this country, and ultimately not just our country, but other democracies around the world have really kind of followed along with the culture that was created by the American founding fathers' ideas and ideals. So yeah, that's what we do on Wednesdays. And then Thursdays is tea talks, and that's a more social dynamic. Different tea professionals around the world come together, and we just casually chat. Usually we have a different topic. It's never light. It's never And it's never just about tea. I mean, tea is what brings us all together, and we will talk about our love of tea and how powerful tea has been as a tool of community for all of us. But we are taking this time, to have activism and passion, for the issues that are going on around us. So that's on Thursdays, and then several other um, webinars and panels that we facilitate, as well as like non-tea related events. So in October, I'll be doing an election event. In November, we'll be doing another virtual tea festival, but this one is going to exclusively be presentations by tea farmers. So be on the lookout for that. I haven't set the date and announced that one just yet. That'll be coming up soon, but we look forward to seeing you all there. That should be an exciting one. We're actually going to be celebrating the new matcha of the year. So we'll be doing the kuchikiri celebration, which is usually reserved just for, tight chado groups, Chinese or Japanese tea ceremony groups that celebrate the new tencha that has aged since the spring harvest and is now available for grinding into matcha. So that'll be in November. Hi, Mafelda, good to see you. Talking about rain in China. It's raining hard there. You should take a look at it. A lot of tea country is getting hit hard by rain. And one of those areas specifically is a very rural province, Gansu province, which is not like a very famous tea growing province. If you even Google search Gansu tea, you're not going to find any, at least in English. I mean, maybe if you were on Taobao and you were searching in Chinese. There's flooding everywhere, and the rivers are overflowing, and the weather patterns. So let's check it out. I had it. Let's see an update for the next 3 days. I think everywhere is getting rain. But yeah, I'd seen a video in Gansu yesterday, and it took out whole bridges and the earth movers, they were trying to build barricades to hold the river in, and even the earth movers, the big cranes that were pulling the dirt, were actually getting pulled into the river. So a lot of really dangerous things going on. A lot of people being displaced. A lot of businesses having to shut down. Not just from the flooding, but also from the pandemic. So these things just keep stacking on for the people. Yeah, it's a sad situation. So let's hope for the best for them. Keep your eyes on the news. I sent out a message to our partners in Gansu to see how they're doing in their village, Chaoyuan, which simply just means tea garden, which I love that. I love the village's name is Tea Garden. So yeah, I'm going to move on to that. I'm going to move on to a cheerier story about the development of quality tea in this small village. So just to preface this whole story, I have no connection to Gansu. I didn't even know about Gansu. Like I said, if you were to Google search Gansu tea, you wouldn't find it. It doesn't exist. Although there is a lot of tea growing there, it's all being rebranded and relabeled as other teas, especially something like Longjing. So this is Longjing tea. This village is only growing Longjing, and they've been for a while actually, since the 60s, since the 1960s is when they started growing tea there. And so that was when the industry was socialized. So, I mean, the government, probably handled all of that and was probably expanded and developed as an industry as a commodity versus a high quality artisanal product. So this small village of Chaoyuan has only 200 people living there. So it's a very, very small village. I'm going to verify. 500. They have 500 registered residences. Most of them don't actually live in the village because just there's no economic opportunity there now. And there's also have been some pretty damaging natural events that have happened there, specifically an earthquake. What year was that? 2004, oh no, 2007. No, it was later than that. 2008. Sorry, had to get that right. 2008, there was a very big earthquake. And this gentleman, Zhao Zong, who is actually my contact, he is, I believe he's from Beijing originally, but he founded a nonprofit. It is a, it's actually China's largest environmental non-governmental agency, organization, NGO, nonprofit. He started this nonprofit called Green Camel Bell, and he's done a lot of different projects and work through that nonprofit, but one of them specifically was with this village, Chaoyuan. And the reason why I know about this work is because he presented at the UC Davis Global Tea Initiative Symposium in 2018, which is the same year that I presented, the story of transparency in supply chain and the tea industry. And he was actually on the same panel that I was on. And he just like totally told this story that I'd never heard of, which was great, you know, because that doesn't happen often. But he's not a tea person. He did not come from tea business. He was not having a tea brand. He just came simply to tell the story of this village and what they were doing there. And it's a great story that is kind of the model of what we'd ideally like to see with all tea producers. To have a story of going from having a planted commodity, planted with the intention of being a commodity, and, you know, of course, we've learned time and time again in recent times that the commodity business just doesn't work for the producer. Maybe it works for some fat middlemen and the retailer and the brands at the end of the chain, but for the producer itself, that system doesn't work. And the solution is just adding more value. Cherish. I liked that word, cherish. Cherish it, you know, and have your, you know, have your products targeted towards a market that is going to cherish, and not waste, and not, you know, consider your products to be commodities. So yeah, that was the story of how I met Zhao Zhang. And he, after the earthquake, his nonprofit went to these areas. I think Sichuan province was hardest hit and got the most aid from the government, the most attention from the different development agencies that were helping with the earthquake relief, that him and his team just kind of explored on to find communities that weren't being touched, that weren't being discovered, and that had significant damage. And so they found this community, Chaoyuan, which is a very isolated community in a valley surrounded by mountains. So, you know, it's very isolated, and even these government officials didn't even have it on the map. Like, they weren't even planning to visit and check in on this village. And so they went there and helped, and for several years helped rebuild the communities itself, using green materials. 3 years. They introduced green materials to build their new homes. Ecological toilets would separate dry from wet waste to prevent them from releasing it to the rivers. They built schools. And they helped set up a small tea cooperative for the village to grow and sell this dragonwell tea. So they had the cultivars in the ground already. They more than likely, I haven't confirmed this yet. I need to call him up and confirm exactly like what was the business mechanism for the tea that was planted, which had been planted since the 1950s. Was there a central, you know, bot leaf factory that they sold to? It's possible. But yeah, these teas definitely weren't being sold as Gansu dragonwell. They were probably being sold as Hangzhou dragonwell or Zifu dragonwell, so that they get a higher price in the market. And so by the time he came to UC Davis, when I got to meet him, Their quality artisanal processing of the tea had already been established, and he had samples, and it was good. The tea was good, and so then the next harvest season, I told him, I said, hey, I want to bring this village onto the Tealet network. You know, dragonwell is a highly demanded tea. It's been, you know, probably the most famous Chinese tea since the 1920s, so it's known and it should be on our catalog. And we did have it. Actually, the very first tea that Tealet sourced, and this was from my first co-founder, my first teammate that I had on Tealet, Jane, in Hawaii. We had just finished studying for our MBA together at University of Hawaii. She is from Shanghai, and she had gone on, like, the summer that we started Tealet, she went on a family vacation to go visit her family in Shanghai. And, you know, Hangzhou is just an hour train ride away. It's very easy to get there, very affordable. So she just went and just walked up. You know, she went to Meijiawu village and Longwu village, which are two, you know, famous villages of the Westlake area. And just made friends with some families and ended up sourcing us 2 beautiful teas. And I continued to source tea from these families for the next 2 years after that, but actually the next 3 years after that. And every year, the price, like, doubled. It was crazy, you know, because, like, these are the famous teas, and that's just what the price is. And so at a certain point, we had to make the decision, just from supply and demand of what's going on in our marketplace, that those teas were priced out of the US market, even for specialty tea, because there's so much counterfeiting going on. And there are teas coming from Yunnan, coming from Shanxi, coming from Sichuan that all taste great, look beautiful, fit the profile of what you're looking for in a Longjing, but are produced in, you know, a much more commercial environment, so they can be much more affordable. And so it's really hard for us to compete with the authentic thing. And so I kind of, like, let go of Dragonwell, of Longjing on our catalog. But then when, you know, I met Zhao Zhong, and I was like, hey, let's do it. The tea is great. It fits the profile. It's not the Zifu Longjing that the community would probably expect from us, but it's still transparent. And ultimately, that's what the entire community wants, is just more transparency on where tea comes from, on how it's made, and just, like, letting the consumer decide for themselves how the quality is. And the tea has performed well, and it's priced, you know, it's priced at a good price. It's still high value, and I'm happy about that too, because that means that the farmers are getting a better price than their local market. And so that was, like, something that he expressed at his speech at UC Davis, was that they've developed the quality, they've developed all the systems, they even have the branding and the packaging, and they set up the Taobao store, they set up the online store to try to sell that product, and they're having trouble even connecting with the local market. First, because Gansu is not a famous tea growing region. So buyers, which, you know, a lot of the specialty tea Chinese market, buyers are attracted to the famous names. And so, you know, if it doesn't have that value to it, then the tea doesn't have as much value in the market. So I'm hoping that the US market can be, you know, a good supporter of this brand, as well as the international market at large. We work with, you know, any tea business around the world. Instagram, I'm going to tune off, but I love you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. See you next time. Yeah, so this is a tea we currently have on our catalog, and it's good. It's a really good tea. It's really at a good price. If you're looking for, like, good artisanal, organic. Okay, so that's another important thing too, that when we went to Longwu and when we went to Meijiawu to meet the farmers and purchase teas in 2014 and 2015, organic was impossible. And not even just or certified organic, but like natural agriculture was impossible. And, one of the farmers, I asked him, I said, hey, our buyers, like, I'm not penalizing you for not being certified organic. That's fine. We just need to know. Because he was claiming that they were natural, and I could tell in the soil it wasn't. They were using some chemicals. And then also the elevation. These places in the Zifu area are actually quite low elevation, which, if you're a farmer, tea farmer specifically, you know that pests during the summertime are a big issue at the lower elevations compared to higher elevations. So pesticide usage is it's a big deal unless you're ready to take on that challenge of dealing with pests. And so he says, yeah, we use pesticide in the summers. And I said, okay, well, then you use pesticides, you use chemicals. He says, oh, no, it's not like that. I'm like, how is it different? He says, well, in the summertime, our tea doesn't have value in the market, so we don't harvest and sell the summer tea or the autumn tea, just the spring tea. And so if we put chemicals on in the summer, there'll be several rains that will occur until our spring harvest. So the chemicals will have washed away by then. So that's why by the spring harvest, the tea is clean. No chemicals. Yeah, so that's not how it works. The chemicals stay. They become a part of the ecosystem. They affect the ecosystem. So even more than that, like my advocacy for transparency in agriculture techniques and agriculture practices has very little to do with like residual chemical in the cup. That's important, yes. And I believe that a consumer has the right to that information if they are concerned with the chemical in the cup. That's less of a concern for me. It is kind of, and I am cautious about things that I consume for that reason. But what concerns me more is the economic and social challenges that these agriculture practices, economic, environmental, and social consequences that happen from these types of agricultural practices. Depleting the fertility of the soil, depleting the ability of the soil to hold on to water, putting farmers into parasitic economic cycles of needing to purchase more and more chemicals every year in order to produce a harvest. These are very big challenges, and it's not good. So this farm or this tea coming from Gansu is really exciting because not only is it affordable or more affordable than the famous Hangzhou versions of the tea, it can be just as good, just as quality, using the same cultivars, even the famous highly regarded cultivars that we're seeking from Longjing. But it's natural. And you can see it in the soil too. It's not just, trust the certification. These farmers are so poor that they couldn't afford chemicals. And, then this environmental NGO led by Zhao Zhong was able to, empower them to create more sustainable systems within their community, which, is even going to impact them even more about taking good care of their agricultural land. Now, if this project were to be executed in the conventional corporate model, the conventional corporate commodity model, some business would have come into that village, would have maybe pumped some money into development projects, developing factories, developing infrastructure to produce tea there. And they would just become like cycles of money, cycles of, just trying to produce more in order to acquire more and develop more. And in those situations, that's when the use of chemicals become very easy because you can afford them You know, the salesperson is convincing you that your harvests are going to be larger if you use them. Your life is going to be easier if you use them. And once you start using them, it's hard to stop, you know, because your soil becomes dependent on it. The new ecology that you're essentially creating at your farm is going to become dependent on it. So the tea is good. It's not certified organic. These guys definitely couldn't afford the certification, and that's another big issue to look out for if you are concerned with supporting good agriculture practices, is that you don't necessarily need to rely on that certification. That sometimes even the certification can work wrong, you know. Like there was that report from years ago, 2013 I believe. There was like a third party organization that went to the grocery and collected samples of all of the certified organic products of tea on the shelf. So this was a lot of like celestial seasoning products, a lot of who's the other? There's another big organic brand out of the Pacific Northwest. Anyway, but Celestial Seasoning was the biggest one. That's the one out of Boulder, Colorado. Huge company. They are 100% certified organic, all of their products. Has a real good feel-good feeling to the brand, to the products. And if you go to Boulder, there is just like among the local people this huge pride and, oh, we're tea people. And yeah, there is a tea room or a tea shop like every 2 doors. But only one of those tea, and it's not even our tea shop, but only one of the businesses in Boulder that actually serves good tea and does good tea is not even a tea shop, it's a coffee shop. These other tea shops are, you know, it's a lot of herbal, it's not even tea. And if it is tea, but it's all certified organic, you know. But this third-party report found that the majority of these samples tested positive for I'm going to look up the exact information on this. That they tested positive for chemical residues. And that even some of them had tested above the lethal limit of this is interesting. And so, you know, there's a lot of talk, how did this happen? How does a product that's certified organic and like a business like a brand like Celestial Seasonings that has a whole line of organic products, certified organic products, how do they test positive? How is that even possible? Well, the reason is that an organic factory, a certified organic factory, may have a small tea field around the factory that they own and that produces leaf for their production. But a lot of these factories have a much larger production capacity than what their own field can supply. So they will buy green leaf from surrounding farmers. Just like with, you know, I want to confirm with these guys in Gansu what they were doing previously. They must have been doing something like that, like selling their harvested leaf to a different factory. Now, in these situations, there is zero accountability, zero traceability about where these leaves are coming from, how much they were purchased for, and what the agriculture practices of that product is. When the certifying body will come and inspect that factory, they are only going to inspect the organic nature of the factory. So that's going to be all the documentation of leaf coming in, not cross-contaminating, non-organic from organic, and all the documentation paper trail of all those things concerning. And then they will inspect the surrounding farm. So they will probably test the soil and test the product there from that farm and check that the factory or the company has protocol in place to ensure that no non-certified organic chemicals are stored on site or brought on site. So, that is checked. But all of the hundreds, if not thousands, of small farms in the surrounding area that are selling their green leaf to the factory, they are not checked. And so that's essentially how this happens. So yeah, buying certified organic is not going to verify any level of good agriculture practices. You kind of have to take it deeper than that if you really want to be organic. Yeah, and so Mafalda, you bring up a good point. There's no point in being organic if the farms around you use chemicals. You'll get contaminated. That's true, but there are methods. There's methods the best method is to try to influence your neighbors, and that's powerful. And we work with some people that put in that work. So like the Kinozuka family from Shizuoka, Japan. I love his story. He's been 35 years, actually now, it's probably like 40 years now. He's been putting in this work. Like 40 years ago when chemical use in Japan was at its like peak. I mean, it's peaking pretty high still now, but 40 years ago, that was like the new thing to do, and even the government was encouraging it and subsidizing it. He took a stand. He said, no, this is products I feed my family and I feed my community, and this is my soil and my legacy. I have no other choice other than being organic. Sorry, guys. My computer died. I guess you'll have to get me from here until the end. Let's see. Nope. There, we'll give me now until I finish. I'm almost done. Oh, so yeah, he's been putting in that work, and everybody called him crazy, and he just kept doing it. He said, I got to be organic, and he started with his own fields, and then after he started making progress with that, was able to slowly convince his neighbors to start making the change and commitment to their soil and to their water and to their environments. And now through kind of necessity, because most of his neighbors, if they haven't already joined him, which he does have a pretty strong co-op of neighboring farms that have joined in on this like organic movement, he didn't convince everybody, but everybody is starting to die. Not from poisoning or anything like that, like just from age, just old, getting old, life is done. And the young people living in the cities or whatever they're doing have no interest or motivation to continue to produce tea for the family. But that land that they're on has so much value that they're not going to just let it go. They're going to hold on to that land. It's worth more than gold in Japan because it's an island and land is a finite resource. So the families will keep the land, but the Kinozuka family have started to take over leases on all the land. And now at this point, they pretty much own a lease on the entire mountain, the whole area where they are, and are doing their organic practices. So that's the best method. The other method I've seen, actually, Alfredo Lin from Goei Tea in Taiwan, he uses a method of planting tea trees from seed and arranging them all around the perimeter of the tea garden if there is conventional gardening happening around that garden. And that tea tree will grow a very strong, deep root system and will protect, and maybe they will absorb all of the chemicals and not let it get into the farm. So there are things to do, but that's a big issue, especially if you have like running water. If you are downstream, you know, there's no getting away from that. So yeah, if we can just keep doing the work of convincing our neighbors to make good decisions, life can be better. So yeah, I've been going for a while. My computer's shut, or my camera's shut. So I guess I'm gonna go now. But yeah, tomorrow I'll be back with another Constitution study. I don't know what I want to talk about, but maybe. Oh, I know what I want to talk about because today is the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote, which it's hard to believe that here in the States, women were the last group of people to gain that right to vote. Um, oh, thanks, Paul, you're still here. So maybe I want to talk about that. I'll talk about the 19th Amendment and all the stuff around that and how that happened and what the historical context was and why the heck all these like woke founding fathers uh, didn't let the women sit at the table. We'll talk about it tomorrow. All right, guys, have a great night. Much love.